Well, good evening. This is Jacob Hornberger, and this is the Jacob Hornberger Show live on the internet on Saturday evenings from 7 to 7:30 Eastern Time. Nice to be back with y'all. And we've got an exciting week coming up here at the Future of Freedom Foundation. We've got our College Civil Liberties Tour coming up, starting on Monday and then continuing through Thursday evening. This is one of the most exciting programs we've done in our 22-year history. I mean, we're going on tour, and we're hitting four of the major colleges around this part of the country. We're starting up in New York City at Columbia University, and then that's on Monday night. And then on Tuesday night, we head on over to Purdue University and Indiana University, a combined venue in Indianapolis. And then that's on Tuesday night. Then on Wednesday, we go over to Middle Tennessee State University. And then on Thursday night, we wrap it up at Ohio State University. And this is going to be, I am sure of it, a fantastic event. What we've done is we've gone into partnership with the Young Americans for Liberty, this great organization composed predominantly of libertarians, and they're mostly college students, lots of young people, and they are actually putting these things on. I mean, they're in charge of organizing these events on these four campuses, promoting them and marketing them. And then the Future of Freedom Foundation has put together the program. And the program consists of three panelists, myself, Glenn Greenwald, and Bruce Fine. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Glenn Greenwald, but he's a liberal. Forbes magazine named him one of the most 25 most influential liberals in the country. And he blogs at salon.com. And I look at his blog every day. I mean, it is absolutely incredible the courage that this guy has. I mean, he's been relentless in the defense of civil liberties in the liberal community. He didn't, like a lot of liberals, as many liberals did when Obama got into office, they sealed their lips. They had been really good, talking about all the infringements on civil liberties that came under the Bush administration. But as soon as their man got into office, they sealed their lips and said, "Oh gosh, this would not be loyal of us if we criticized our man. We've got to seal our lips. We've got to be quiet now." Not Greenwald. He has been steadfast and relentless with respect to Obama, to the same extent that he was with Bush. And his thinking is among the most insightful in the country. I mean, his analysis is always right on, and he's been attacked by some people in the liberal community for raising these issues in the context of the political campaign. And I am sure that people are going to really enjoy listening to Glenn talk. And then we've got Bruce Fine, who I'm sure if you've ever heard Bruce Fine talk, you know that he's one of the greatest speakers of our time. I mean, nobody knows history better than Bruce. He has a clear understanding of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, jurisprudence. I mean, he's one of the most erudite, eloquent speakers, and passionate and committed to the defense of civil liberties. And then he's a conservative. He served in the Reagan administration in the Justice Department. I'll be bringing the libertarian perspective to civil liberties. Those of you who have been with FFF know that we've been defending civil liberties not just since 9/11, but ever since our very first year when we were publishing our monthly journal, Freedom Daily. We've been focusing and emphasizing the vital importance of civil liberties, and all three of us are lawyers, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be important because, as everyone knows, this area of civil liberties is one of the major issues of our time. I happen to consider it the most important issue of freedom in our time, more so even than socialism or gun rights or whatever, because this involves the power of government to assassinate Americans. It involves the power of the federal government to just go pick up Americans, cart them away to a concentration camp, military dungeon, torture them, waterboard them, do whatever they want to them, execute them. This is not the kind of America the Founding Fathers had in mind. And that's the same kind of power that exists, for example, in the military dictatorship in Egypt, which, of course, the U.S. government has been supporting for many, many years with cash and armaments and so forth to solidify that regime. Well, so this is important. I mean, I consider it the most important thing. And by the way, the founding fathers and our American ancestors, the framers, they all considered it so important too, because there's 4 amendments to the in the Bill of Rights that are devoted to this issue: the Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment. So, kind of shows you the importance they put on it. And we've got Jack Hunter from who writes often in American Conservative magazine. He's now affiliated with the Young Americans for Liberty. He's going to be the moderator of these panels. We're going to have a really good time. We're going to be live streaming this thing. So, I want y'all to come. If you're in the area, I'd like to invite you to come. I think it'd be great to have FFF viewers and supporters and subscribers to come and interact with all the young people there. There's going to be some social time. Introduce them to libertarian ideas. Tell them why you're passionate about libertarianism. Maybe you can learn from them too. Listen to their perspective. So it's the ideal place, to share ideas on liberty and exchange them, because the nice thing about college campus is that there seems to be an openness, a willingness to consider new ideas without getting threatened by them and so forth. And I think that young people, college students, are among that group of people that just senses that something's not right in this country. Something's just not right, and that's what we're going to be talking about. That things are not right in this country, and especially in this area of civil liberties. So I'd like to invite you to come, but if you can't come, we're going to be live streaming the event. You can just go to fff.org and go to the FFF email update, and up there you'll see the announcement for the College Civil Liberties Tour. You click on that, and it'll take you to a page where it says, click here for the live stream video that you'll be able to watch, live on the internet. Now, the times vary, so take a look at the announcement, scroll down, you'll see which college and what time, and so you'll be able to live stream in. So I hope you can make it, preferably personally, but if not, I hope you can make it, by live streaming. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you tonight about, what the Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises called interventionism, and especially in the context of the healthcare debate. I mean, I find this thing so fascinating, both from the conservative Republican standpoint and the liberal, Democrat standpoint. It's absolutely phenomenal to me. I mean, this debate really expresses why and how everything has gone so bad in this country. Notice the terms of the debate. That you've got this healthcare crisis. Okay? Everybody agrees on that. There's a healthcare crisis. And so President Obama says, well, I have a solution to the healthcare crisis. And that solution is Obamacare, which involves a multiplicity of things. It's akin to universal health care provision. But part of it is this mandatory mandate that forces everybody to go out and buy health insurance. And if they don't, they get penalized. Well, the Republicans, the conservatives, are all up in arms about this. You see, and boy, you can see them. The presidential candidates are there saying, "I'm going to repeal Obamacare," and "I'm going to repeal Obamacare." And that's all they tell you is that they're going to do whatever is necessary to get rid of Obamacare. But notice that their field of thinking is so limited, because you see what happens when they get rid of Obamacare. You see, they never answer that question, because you see there's a health care crisis before Obamacare. So Obamacare purports to deal with this crisis, but then where does that leave? Suppose you get rid of Obamacare, where does that leave you? Well, it leaves you with the crisis that existed before Obamacare. Now, there's no question that Obamacare makes things worse. I mean, okay, so that's a given. I mean, that's one thing the Republicans understand. But you see, if you just get rid of what purported to be the fix for the healthcare crisis, you still have a crisis, because The crisis that Obamacare purported to resolve, which it did not and will not, that will still be there when you get rid of Obamacare. But yet these Republicans and all these conservatives, that's all they focus on. I mean, that's their new obsession. You know, Obamacare, Obamacare, got to get rid of Obamacare. I'm going to issue an executive order. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. All right. And then what are you going to do? They never answer. They never answer. You know, they'll if you pinned them, they probably would say, well, I'll do something. I'm not going to tell you what, but I'm going to do something. Well, the point is that there's nothing they can do, and they know it. You see, everybody is finally, well, not everybody, but lots of people are starting to finally realize that this whole system of government involvement in healthcare is inherently defective. I mean, this is what libertarians, what we've been saying for decades. It's the system itself that is at the root of the crisis. It's the cause of the crisis. You see, you know, if you get rid of Obamacare, you still have the crisis that is associated with government involvement in healthcare. Okay, and now you know there's this sort of pretense among these people that there's some magic solution. I mean, this is where conservatives and liberals come together. They coalesce. They may disagree on Obamacare, okay, but where they coalesce is they honestly believe that government should play a role in healthcare. I mean, that's why, you know, from a fundamental standpoint, and what I've been arguing for years at the Future of Freedom Foundation since our inception, you know, 22 years ago, is that there's not a dime's worth of difference between a conservative and a liberal, because they both believe in the fundamentals. They both believe that government has a legitimate role in healthcare. Now, we can see this with Medicare and Medicaid. When was the last time you saw any conservative challenge the existence of Medicare and Medicaid? Never. It's only the libertarians that do it. Okay? I mean, the conservatives and liberals have accepted as a permanent feature of American life the existence of Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, that's the given in their mindset, which is a mindset of statism, that we could not survive without Medicare and Medicaid, without government providing health care for the poor, for the needy, for the elderly. That if the government didn't provide this health care, the elderly would be dying in the streets, and so would the poor. The only thing would be left with the rich and the middle class, and young people, because you see all the old people would be dying in the streets. That's their mindset. Now, you know, it's ironic that Republicans love to call President Obama a socialist. Okay, right? I mean, don't we always hear this? Well, the reason they call him a socialist is because he believes in socialistic programs. I mean, it's not that, you know, Obama wants to nationalize everything like Castro did, or that Hugo Chavez would love to do and is on the road to doing. I mean, you know, he's not going to go that far, but he believes in socialistic programs. Well, but then when Republicans call him a socialist and they point their finger at him, they got three fingers pointing back at themselves, because they believe in socialistic programs too. They believe in Social Security. They believe in Medicare and Medicaid. They believe in education grants, foreign aid, especially to military dictatorships like the one in Egypt. They believe that government plays a valuable role in taking money from people and giving it to other people. Okay? It's only libertarians that challenge that socialist paradigm. Oh, by the way, while we're on the subject of Castro and Cuba, guess what one of Castro's pride and joys is with respect to socialism in Cuba? You got it. Healthcare. Government provision of healthcare. Everyone gets healthcare for free. I mean, that's not just the poor and the elderly. Everyone. Now, you see, that's no different from the mindset of conservatives and liberals. I mean, liberals would love it. Obama would just love it. Let's have universal health care. Government provides the health care for everybody. The conservatives might say, well, I don't want to go that far, but we do agree that government should provide health care to the poor and the needy. Okay? So what we're talking about here is a difference in degree and a difference of the extent of government involvement in health care. But from a fundamental standpoint, a principle standpoint, there's not a dime's worth of difference between a liberal and a conservative. It's only we libertarians who call for an end, a repeal, an immediate repeal of Medicare and Medicaid. Now, what happens with these programs, inevitably, I mean, we see it in every federal program. You take any example you want, the drug war, or you want to take immigration, or any other government program, education. And what happens is that the initial intervention inevitably creates a crisis. It produces problems. Now, what they do to get these things enacted is they'll make people believe there's a problem. Like when they were getting Medicare and Medicaid enacted in the 60s, they were saying, oh, well, the elderly don't have health care, and they'll point to some monumental, disaster story, and they'll use that as to finally get the nose in the door. And, then they say, oh, well, now we've got to expand it. But what inevitably happens is that there's bigger problems that result from the intervention. In other words, the problem they were trying to fix turns out to be minuscule compared to the problems they produce with the intervention. And this is what Ludwig von Mises was talking about, especially in his famous book Interventionism, or the Crisis of Interventionism, is that you produce problems with this initial intervention, and instead of just getting rid of the original intervention and acknowledging that this socialist or interventionist statist program should never have been enacted, what they do is they say we need a new intervention to fix the problems that arose from the previous intervention. And then, guess what happens? Yeah, the second intervention produces a whole new host of problems, which calls for a third intervention and a fourth intervention. And you've got interventions piled on interventions, and gradually government control over this whole field just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you finally get to a point like Obamacare. And even beyond Obamacare, where there's going to be huge problems produced by that intervention, they're going to be calling for, a Castro-like socialist, where government just gives everybody free health care. The doctors work for the government. Maybe the rich will have their private doctors, but most everybody's going to be going to government doctors and so forth. I mean, that's down the line. It's inevitable because you inevitably have more and more and more problems arise from this thing. Well, this is what liberals and conservatives just will not acknowledge. And so when they want to get rid of this this latest intervention by Obamacare with the mandates, they don't stop to think about the fact that the crisis is still going to exist from all the previous interventions, so they're going to need to do something. I mean, the best thing they could do is do nothing and just leave that crisis. I mean, that's the second best thing to do. Leave the crisis alone. Don't touch it. Don't pass a new intervention because it only throws fuel onto the fire. But the best thing you can ever do when you've got a weed like this is pull the weed out by its root. Just repeal Medicare and Medicaid. Admit it's been a disaster. I mean, look at healthcare costs. They're soaring through the roof. Isn't that a coincidence? Were they soaring through the roof before Medicare and Medicaid? Nope. They were just reasonably priced services, just like any other service. And Medicare and Medicaid sent these things through the roof. They've created a dependency among people, among doctors. And doctors are scared to death of losing Medicare and Medicaid, despite the fact that they know that they're under the iron hand of the government, iron fist of the government. The government can go in there and monitor and audit Medicare doctors and send them to the penitentiary for umpteen years because that's the way the regulated society works. Somebody's always in violation of some regulation. You can't comply with all of them, and so they always are able to go after a doctor if they want to. On the supply side, we've got medical licensure, which is just a protection racket for doctors. It keeps the competition down. Competitive healthcare providers have to go get a license in order to compete. Well, you know how difficult that is, and In fact, and of course, the statists will say, "Oh my gosh, Jacob, you would let anybody be a brain surgeon, and boy, there'd be quacks doing brain surgery if there weren't licensure." Well, it's just nonsense. I mean, anybody that goes to a quack for brain surgery, I guess he probably does have some brain problems. But you'd have in a free market with no medical licensure, you'd have certifying agencies, including the American Medical Association, saying, "Hey, here are the approved doctors," and you go to your regular doctor, and you get a recommendation, and so forth. I mean, people would be very cautious about who they chose. But in the larger scheme of things, you'd have a tremendous supply of healthcare providers, alternative healthcare, giving people choices as to how they want to deal with their healthcare issues. If they don't want to go the regular route with medicines and they want to go the natural route, why shouldn't they be free to do that? I mean, it's their choice, it's their life. So you got control over here on the supply side. Oh, by the way, if you want to read the best argument on this ever, read Milton Friedman on medical licensure. We've got a reprint on our website at fff.org. Just type in Friedman medical licensure, and you can read that article. It's fantastic. Friedman said, well, he's tackling the whole issue of occupational licensure, but he says, well, you might as well take the toughest case, instead of dealing with hairdressers and, shoe shine people and so forth. He says, I'll take on the toughest issue, medical licensure, and he makes the case as to why there should be no medical licensure. So all of a sudden on the demand side, you've repealed Medicare and Medicaid. On the supply side, you've repealed, licensure control, the protection racket for the healthcare industry from competition. And then you get rid of all the regulations, that inhibit supplying people with insurance, cross state lines, health insurance. Why shouldn't you be free to buy health insurance from whomever is offering it? And all of a sudden now, what are we talking about? We're talking about a full-fledged free market here, a total free market in healthcare. Wow. You can say, well, Jacob, I thought we had a free enterprise system. Well, no, we have a system in which the government is free to control healthcare. That's not free enterprise. That was not the original concept of free enterprise. Free enterprise originally meant enterprise that is free of government control. Now, that doesn't mean enterprise that is subject to government control. It means it's free of government control. So what we're talking about is a total separation of healthcare and the state. I mean, just like we've separated religion and the state, where we don't permit the government to control churches or to subsidize churches or to get involved in church activities. It just doesn't exist. The government doesn't have the power to do these things. That's the way healthcare would be. A total separation of healthcare and the state. Where the government would have no power to regulate healthcare, provide healthcare to anyone, to restrict the providing of healthcare. Be a total separation of healthcare and the state. Now, this would be the greatest thing that could ever happen to this country. It'd be the greatest thing that could ever happen to the world. That a total separation of healthcare and the state. I mean, you would be back on the road to establishing the greatest healthcare system in the world. I mean, you'd have the dynamics of a market economy with respect to healthcare. You ditch the income tax because, the ideal is to get rid of all the socialist programs. You leave people free to keep their own money. All of a sudden, healthcare is returned to reasonably priced services. And without an income tax, I mean, imagine 10 years ago, if the Future Freedom Foundation had been successful in getting the income tax repealed. Let's say that you've been paying on average $10,000 a year in income taxes. You'd have $100,000 in your savings account plus interest. I don't know what the interest would be over that time, but let's say it's, $20,000. That's $120,000 you'd have in your savings account right now. That's a significant amount of money to pay insurance premiums, health care costs, and to do a lot more. In other words, to handle your own life, to handle your own responsibilities. this siren song that government is going to protect you and keep you safe and watch over you and be your daddy. That's exactly what it is. It's a siren song. It leads people, it leads nations onto the rocks and destroys them because it doesn't do any of those things, any of these fields. And so instead of having a system where you've got intervention after intervention after intervention, you've got a system that says government's got no business in this area. And so you've got a total free market in healthcare. I mean, the ideal is a constitutional amendment that says no law shall be passed respecting the regulation of health care or abridging the free exercise thereof. Then all of a sudden you've put it in the same sense as religion. In fact, it's ironic that now the concept of religious liberty is sort of interweaving with this interventionism in healthcare. The Catholics are upset, and rightfully so, because as part of this mandate that comes with Obamacare, President Obama is saying that every employer has to provide insurance to his employees that encompasses insurance for abortion and contraceptives and some other things that violate the Catholic faith, the principles of the Catholic faith. So all of a sudden you've got Catholic bishops writing letters to their constituents saying, we've got a crisis of conscience here. What do we do? I mean, our faith says we cannot do this. And yet here's government saying you're mandated to do this. And it's going to be interesting to see if nobody blinks here, if Obama doesn't back down, it's going to be interesting to see whether the church is going to back down. I doubt it. I mean, I can't imagine the church saying, well, Caesar has forced us to do this, and so we really don't have a choice. I mean, I think you've got the makings of some civil disobedience here. I can't see the church backing down on this thing. The problem is that the bishops and the church itself, the church hierarchy, they don't get it. You see that all these years of government provided health care, it's inevitably led to this. I mean, it's the old position, he who pays the piper calls the tune. I mean, the government's providing things for you. As the Supreme Court once said, it's hardly lack of due process for the government to regulate that which it subsidizes. And what about the crisis of conscience of people that are forced to provide health care for the elderly and the poor? I mean, that's what Medicare and Medicaid all are about. They take money from one group of people in order to give it to another group of people. Where's the morality in that? That's founded on force. Why shouldn't all this be voluntary? If people are poor, or people are elderly, and they can't afford it, they can turn to their families, they can turn to charitable organizations, March at Dimes, Jerry Lewis Telethon, new organizations that would help out with health care expenses for people that need them, and doctors and hospitals providing free health care. That's the way it was when I was growing up. There was no Medicare and Medicaid. I grew up in what the federal government said was the poorest city in the United States, Laredo, Texas. And yeah, the town was filled with poor people. There was a lot of middle class too, and there were very wealthy people, especially in the oil industry. But by and large, tremendous poverty. That the doctor's offices were filled every day with poor people. And I never heard of one single doctor turning away a person because he couldn't pay. They just did it. They'd send them bills or whatever. Sometimes the people would bring over chickens or whatever to pay the doctor. But the doctor, it didn't matter to the doctor. It was like he was making so much money off the people that could pay that he just said, okay, that's part of my business. I'm going to give health care to the poor. He didn't even think twice about it. The doctors were among the wealthiest people in town. I mean, they just did it as part of the services. The hospitals did the same thing. And imagine, if you had no income tax, then doctors would have no excuse not to be providing health care. I think they'd be happy to do so as part of just the regular life. And it isn't that much more meaningful when people are helping out voluntarily instead of a socialist system that's founded on force and coercion? Well, that's the way life would be if you had a total separation of health care in the state. And that's what we must do as libertarians. We can leave the conservatives and the liberals to fight over which form of statism, which statist reform they're going to adopt. That's not going to get us anywhere. It's just short-term fixes. It's who's going to have power, who's going to better wield the levers of power, who's going to get the glory and power of being in office. What we libertarians have to keep doing is raising people's vision to a higher level. That's how we got things like freedom of religion and freedom of the press and right to habeas corpus. It was because groups of people were out there raising people's vision to a much higher level, to the real principles of freedom and free markets and a constitutionally limited republic. And that's what we've got to continue doing as libertarians. That's the show. Hope you can tune in next week. And thanks for your great support of FFF. And I'll see you next week. And I'll give you a full report next week on how the college tour came out. Thanks so much. Have a nice rest of the weekend. And see you next weekend. Bye.